start of the podcast, part 2. Going to be talking about cannibalism, pros and cons. What do we think? What's a pro?
Overpopulation.
Yeah. Get rid of some of us while the rest are still got full tummies.
The pros would be that what you're eating is just right across the street.
Yeah. In the book, it describes it as like a community. It's not like they're hunting each other. They all know that they're all living in a system where one group eats the other, and then it goes on in that like a circle. So everyone knows where they're getting their food from, and they just happen to live right next to them.
Yeah, it's a circular way of life.
Con, you are eating a human being.
Yeah, and that could lead to mad cow disease.
Diseases, and then you know there's going to be somebody at some point that's like, maybe we shouldn't eat each other. This is kind of screwed up, just a little bit.
Yeah, but then again, in his, idea of this cannibalistic society, nobody sees it as something weird.
True.
Because whenever he talks about it, it's not meant to be for humans. It's meant to be for the animal kingdom. Lions eat hyenas. Lions eat gazelles. Gazelles eat the plants, and the plants eat the lion once he dies. It's a continuous cycle of life and death. So there's no ill will.
So it's more like we gotta fit ourselves into that cycle to make sure that our population doesn't get too big and that the food population isn't getting too small at the same time.
And we've got an example of someone who breaks that law. Ishmael describes it as the peacekeeping law. And he says, one day someone decides, well, they don't want to be a part of it, and the animal kingdom decides to execute him. But I think mankind was that one who went away from that circular rotation, decided to become that.
Now we're getting executed.
Now we're getting...
Yeah. Except now we're bringing the rest of the world down with us, which could just destroy all life forms, not just us.
The animal kingdom's in shock. Like they said, nothing's ever happened like this.
Yeah.
And everyone's being executed as well.
It has to be such a drastic consequence because it's such an important law to follow if we want life to keep going and the earth to keep thriving, at least how we picture thriving.
Is the way that we picture this society where one groups eat the other groups, they describe their law as they follow it invariably. They're all friendly and cheerful and peaceful, all those things that you find so attractive in us. The only thing that we as humans would find dreadful in the animal society is that death. They circle one another. As humans, we try to prevent that death, but it's natural.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, it's like trying to go back to fitting ourselves in that role of that circular way of life. It just seems so below us, I guess, in a way. We just live in what we consider luxury to an extent that going back to that way of life would just be awful and just miserable for us the entire time. Which is then you have to look at the leaver group who are still filling in that role. And to us, we think that it's a miserable way of life. And then later on in the book, it talks about, or Ishmael discusses with his student, if he would ever actually go back to that way of life. And his student answers saying no, it sounds repulsive. He's just completely disgusted by the thought because it'd be so miserable. But how miserable are they really? Because they've got food.
The difference really between the leavers and the takers is that the takers will make more than what they need. So you're constantly adding on population, adding on, while the Weavers will just make as much as they need. In the book, there's a good timeline. They have the Weavers. They start at 3000 BC and at 2000 AD.
Mm.
But there's a sort of branch off at about 8000 BC where the Takers will branch off as well.
Yeah.
That's around when humanity gained roughly when we gained sentience. And then as soon as that feeling of self and I am an individual came to being, then we instantly turned on all of our animalistic and barbaric feelings in nature.
There became a separation or a
Yeah.
divide
Between creatures and humans.
Like we don't want to say that we live like an animal. No, technically we're an animal, but everyone knows that difference between a human,
It's that line of
wild
sentience.
creature.
It's the beginning of the
Self-awareness.
revolution.
Yeah. Later on, he talks about, the student talks to Ishmael about how if they were gonna bring all this information up to the common population, there's no point in doing it if they're just gonna scold them and tell them that they're just doing everything wrong. They also need something to work towards that's positive, that they can learn from it. And they talk about how that can become future generations that we teach. He describes as this generation of humans as being like kindergartner teachers, and you want the world to go through all of high school into higher education, where they're just learning from the past. But to do that, we would have to make significant changes so that there is a future generation to go into. So I was wondering, would you actually be willing to become like that hunter-gatherer, live in that hunter-gatherer lifestyle?
Yeah, that'd be dope.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because they talk about how...
Well, there's no construct of government in that society. There's no construct of any social fibers. Everybody just does their own thing. It's chill.
Yeah.
I mentioned there's no government.
There's no government. True.
So there's nobody to tax you or do anything.
You always have food.
You just survive on what you can get, and everything just stays relatively calm.
Yeah. They have this hypothetical conversation where Ishmael pretends to be like a lever, and then his student has to convince him as a taker of why he's living the wrong way, and he's talking about how they don't grow food and they're gonna run out of food and they're gonna have natural disasters that are gonna kill off some of them, and he's just like, well, yeah, that's just how it goes. There's gonna be a hurricane, there's gonna be a drought, and then some of us are gonna dwindle because there will be less food, but then there'll be less of us, so they'll match the food. The ones that live will still get food, and everything is going to stay in balance rather than trying to take control over all of it.
Yeah, because whenever you see, like, say a deer, you're driving and you smack a deer, kill it. Its whole herd just watched you murder it and just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
They aren't going to be like, dang. They're going to be like, yo, we got to get. So when humans, we just feel a sense of camaraderie towards other humans, which pretty much whenever we see somebody in trouble or on the brink of dying, we don't want them to die because we understand how we'd feel in that situation. So that is ultimately why we could never have a situation like that, because then humanity, we'd end up, if we, instead of just letting those people die off to natural selection, we'd end up trying to help them and help build a world where we can all live like now, where nobody's scared of death.
Yeah.
But then again, that's breaking one of the fundamental laws of nature.
That's the hard part, is when you get tied into the ethics of everything. It's like, technically, if you feed a bunch of starving people from an external source of food that doesn't grow from the starving people's land, then yeah, they've got food for now, but then they're just going to eat that food, repopulate, and then there's going to be more of them starving because they still can't get food from their own environment. So then it's going to be more people suffering, and then the loop just continues, and just the population of people suffering is just going to keep increasing. But at the same time, you'd feel terrible if you just let them starve and you just looked at them and was like, I'm sorry, just not going to feed you, just going to let you starve and die.
It's not the exact lack of empathy that makes leavers and separates them from takers. It's more of the way they live, where they only make as much as they need. Even like mothers in nature will, if they see a injured animal, they may even take it in as their own. It's not exactly that they're losing that empathy. It's more that we need to preserve each other as our own species. So what separates the takers and the leavers is how much food they make. The takers will make enough food for the next generation. The leavers are more worried about now, as that's the natural law of man, or the world.
Yeah. Okay, next question. There's a discussion of whether or not civilization just needs to be taken out of the scenario completely.
Yeah.
Does that need to happen, or
Yeah.
can there still be civilization?
Yeah, humanity's a cancer upon the planet. Like, we are literally the worst thing to ever happen to this planet. You look at every other species, the only thing that they do bad is probably whenever they die, they release a little bit of carbon emissions.
Yeah.
That's it. Humanity, we have done so many horrendous things to this planet that we deserve to be eliminated.
So
Like,
should
we
just
got caught
all
outside the
get
storm building, so
Yeah.
we just don't need to be here. We are the problem.
Okay.
Again, it's not exactly that civilization is the problem. It's more of what as the higher ups of civilization do. I mean, even like hunters and gatherers, they will come together in a civilization, and eventually those people built houses and they built communities. However, once you start destroying instead of reusing and recycling, that's when you get a problem. Civilization isn't the problem.
Yeah. If you near
Well,
the end of
to be civilized is to be the apex. That's what it means. In order for us to have became the apex, we had to destroy the earth. So therefore, in that road to civilization, it takes destroying the earth in order to reach your goal.